See, that's now the new level. The protesters, at least the ones that have, in my opinion, articulated why they're out there, believe that all 4 officers should be arrested, should be charged with first-degree murder. Remember, the principal cop who was arrested and charged was charged with third-degree murder, which is manslaughter. It's a murder, but it's manslaughter. It's not first degree.
Imperative that we understand, as we all demand justice, that we have to look not only at the video that tells us in common sense what happened.
That is the lawyer for the family, Ben Crump. He's now the kind of go-to lawyer. I notice a number of these cases where a black person is alleged to have been a victim of police brutality. He often is the counsel. So it seems to me he's displaced Garagos and some of these other guys that you see a lot. Michael Bodden, the forensic pathologist, said that he died, George Floyd, from asphyxiation, pressure on his neck. And Bodden then said this, and I'm paraphrasing. Police believe that if a suspect can talk, he can breathe. Meaning, as long as George Floyd was saying, I can't breathe, Bodden says cops believe that that means he can breathe because he can speak. Now, why is that important? Because for you to get first-degree murder, it has to be premeditated and deliberate. And if, as Bodden says, the cop assumed that he could still breathe, and that cops in general assume that when a suspect says, I can't breathe, they can still breathe because they can talk, how are you going to do first-degree murder? So the expectation now is that anything short of first-degree murder is unjust. And regarding the other officers that stood around there, I ask you, ask them if they were aware that Lloyd was being killed, would you have done something? And I bet you all 3 of them would have said, yes, of course I would have. We didn't realize they're going to say how much pressure was put on. We heard him say that I can't breathe, and the assumption was, he says if he can talk, he can breathe. We're wrong. How does that get you first-degree murder? It doesn't. So, just get ready when this trial starts, and assuming the officer is not charged with first-degree murder, or if he is, and they don't get a conviction, because you can always still increase the charges, are we setting up ourselves up for some more riots? Now, this is a Seattle council member named Tammy Morales explaining why she's confused why people are so upset at the looters.
But what I don't want to hear is for our constituents to be told to be civil, not to be reactionary, to be told that looting doesn't solve anything. And, you know, it does make me wonder and ask the question why looting bothers people so much more than knowing that across the country, Black men and women are dying every day and far too often at the hands of those who are sworn to protect and serve.
Wow. You know, I once debated Rob Reiner, and I think the only reason he agreed to debate me is he didn't know who I was. This is years ago, shortly after I had started on radio. I believe it was a local CBS newscast. And Rob Reiner was trying to, and was successful at, putting a ballot amendment for a cigarette tax. And the idea was to raise money for childhood development programs. And so I was taking, of course, the side that we shouldn't be having a cigarette tax. And on the air, I said, a live program, I said, government actually makes money off of cigarette smokers, because a certain percentage are going to die sooner than they otherwise would, therefore saving taxpayers Medicare and Social Security. And when you look at the taxes that people pay on for cigarettes, and they're getting higher and higher and higher, and the savings, in quotes, that people get, taxpayers get from the early demise of about a quarter of people who smoke cigarettes, they actually make money. So the debate was over, segment was over, And he came up to me and he said, "Excuse me, Larry, do you have any data, any source for your assertion that taxpayers actually benefit from people who smoke cigarettes if you're just looking at it surely on a cost-benefit basis?" I said, "Sure," and I gave it to him. And I said, "How can you take a position and make an argument that cigarette smokers are costing taxpayers when in fact it's the opposite? How can you not know that?" And he muttered something, and that was pretty much it. How can these people out there in the streets not know, according to the CDC, that police killings of blacks have dramatically declined over the last 45 years by almost 75%? How can you not know that? How can you not know of a peer-reviewed study in a publication put out by the National Association of Sciences in which every single police shooting in the year 2015 was examined, and they could not find any evidence whatsoever of disproportionate deadly force used against blacks? And then, of course, there's this smaller study by the Harvard economist I told you about. Not only did he not find that they used disproportionate deadly force against blacks, but that they were more hesitant, more reluctant to use deadly force against blacks than against whites. How can you not know this? How can you not know about the police contact survey that's done every 2 years or 3 years, where over 60,000 Americans are asked, "Did you have any contact with the police last year?" If the answer is yes, then a series of questions regarding how you were treated are asked. No pattern whatsoever of disproportionate force used against minorities. Now, the perception is that the average black person is going to have far more interactions with the cops than the average white person. It turns out that in terms of people that have 2 or more contacts with the police any given year, you're talking about 1.2% of all whites, 1.5% of all blacks. So it is rare for people to have multiple contacts with the police. How can you not know this? How can you not know that more whites are murdered by blacks than blacks are murdered by whites? How can you not know that? Now, again, as I said many times, most murder is same-race murder. But to the extent that there are interracial black-white homicides every year, about 750, how can you not know that blacks kill 500 whites, even though blacks are 13% of the population, and whites kill 250 blacks, even though they're around 61% of the population? How can you not know that? How can you not know that a young black boy is around 8 times more likely to be a homicide victim compared to a young white boy? How can you not know that? And you're out in the streets making all these assertions? And what you're doing is making things worse. You're creating an image of the police department that's going to make people not want to join it, and you're causing the so-called Ferguson effect that Rahm Emanuel talked about, where he said the police in Chicago have rolled themselves up into a fetal position for fear of being accused of being racist. Well done, Black Lives Matter.